Barrett with USA Wrestling, and this press conference is an update on the effort to keep wrestling in the Olympic Games, organized by the Committee to Preserve Olympic Wrestling, COPAO. It's a U.S. group which has been working on this issue since the 12th of February, when the International Olympic Committee Executive Board made a recommendation that wrestling not be included as a core sport in the 2020 Olympics. There's been a lot happening in the last 5.5 weeks, and we have 4 guests here to talk about it. Also today, we're announcing a 2020 vision campaign through COPAO, which is going to be our marketing effort to try to get the world together behind this cause. There's a press release about that, which I can provide to you afterwards. That's going to be part of today's activities. The tagline of this campaign is Wrestling, Keep the Dream Alive. And you may have seen some ads with that in the event program here at the NCAA tournament. There's also been some banners and things of that sort, and that's all part of the new campaign. The format here will be simple. I'm going to ask one question to each of our guests, and then after that we're going to open up to questions. And I'm going to start with to my left and work down the row. My first guest to the left is Bill Scher. He was an NCAA champion for Nebraska, world champion wrestler, Olympic medalist, and has been a leader in the Olympic family for many years. And he chairs COPAO, the organization that's working together through USA Wrestling on this cause. Jim, could you explain the progress that's been made by COPAO in leading the American effort to assist in the international strategy to preserve Olympic wrestling?
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I think we've gotten off to a great early start. Our committee was formed when this bombshell was dropped on the International Wrestling Committee, the Executive Board's decision at the IOC to recommend to the general membership of the IOC that wrestling be dropped as a core sport. We quickly formed a group, and within 3 days, this coalition of like-minded individuals, which was really formed and assisted by USA Wrestling, was able to work to influence the International Wrestling Federation, and a member of our committee, Stan Dezic, the first vice president of FILA, was very instrumental in getting the FILA Bureau to vote no confidence in its current leadership, its president, Rafi Martinetti. They voted no confidence for him, and he resigned his presidency, and they appointed an acting president, Nenad Lalovic. Martinetti was a roadblock, and right or wrong, he led the demise of wrestling. And we needed new leadership. We got new leadership. That's the first and most important impact that we've had. That new leadership is now working to do 2 things primarily. One is to work with the IOC to get back into the core program and work through the process of the IOC. Make no mistake about it, we disagree vehemently with the decision of the International Olympic Committee. But also make no mistake that the fault lies largely with the leadership of wrestling and not the process and the individuals at the International Olympic Committee. We want to be part of that process. We want to be part of the games, and we're going to work with them to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get back on that program from within that organization, within that process. And we've hired and helped FILA hire and recommended to them an international consulting firm by the name of Teneo that has worked with the last 4 successful Bid City campaigns. And they've also hired another consulting individual. They're working to create a contract and hire as a consultant my brother Jim, who, as many of you know, was the CEO of the U.S. Olympic Committee and knows many of the IOC members very closely and very directly. In this country, we want to use this momentum and focus that this negative decision has created to turn it into something positive. And that is great public publicity and recognition of the sport of wrestling in this country, and utilizing that awareness to build and strengthen the sport in our country. Whether we win or lose the Olympic campaign to stay in the core program, we can use this to really help build and increase what we've been doing in this country for wrestling. So to that end, we've hired Ketchum, a U.S. well-recognized public relations firm, to lead a PR campaign in this country, and that's being funded by our organization in USA Wrestling. We've hired another grassroots sports company called King of the Mountain Sports, which has put this campaign together that you see. And that's a campaign to go out and reach grassroots folks. And we're going to use this information that we collect, all the people that we're able to gather to support this effort, to keep them in the fold and help them to build wrestling at the grassroots level of this country. And we strengthen it in this country, and then we help it happen all around the world. Whether we're in or out in this most recent go-round, the sport will continue to grow, and then the Olympic Committee will have no choice but to keep us in that program in the future.
Second guest is Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio, who's leading our congressional effort for a resolution supporting Olympic wrestling out of Washington. Congressman Jordan was a two-time NCAA champion for Wisconsin, a very talented freestyle wrestler before his career in political leadership. Congressman, what kind of reaction have you heard from your colleagues in Washington about the IOC recommendation, and what's the status of the resolution that you've been working with some of your colleagues in Congress?
Let me too thank you, Gary, for your leadership and USA Wrestling, and certainly the leadership of Bill Scheer and everyone who's involved in this effort. It's been great. You know, look, from the day it happened, every single day, whether I'm in Ohio, around our district, or last week I was in Florida speaking to a trade association, no matter where I'm at, someone, and I'm sure you're all getting this as well, someone comes up to me and talks to me about this crazy decision. We have a resolution that's bipartisan. Dave Lopsack, a good Iowan, he's on the other side of the aisle, but he's still a good Iowan, is the lead sponsor. I'm co-sponsor along with Tim Walz from the state of Minnesota. So strong bipartisan effort in support of wrestling, talking about the great history and heritage it has in this country and around the world. That resolution is picking up co-sponsors each and every day. And then we also have with us today a letter signed by Speaker of the House John Boehner, Majority Leader Eric Cantor, and other members of Congress expressing their support for making sure wrestling stays a part of the Olympic Games. So I think it's strong. You're just sensing it and feeling it, and it's one of those. Some of you may know I'm one of the more conservative members of Congress, but this is one of those issues where party lines aren't a problem at all. We're working together to try to protect this sport and make sure it stays a part of the Olympic Games.
Thank you very much, Congressman. To your left, our third guest is Dan Gable. He's a legend in wrestling, pretty well known in the state we're in right now. He's a member of CAPOW. He serves on the committee which Bill Scheer chairs. He was a two-time NCAA champ for Iowa State, a record-setting coach for Iowa, Olympic champion athlete, Olympic coach. He's also in the Hall of Fame internationally for the sport of wrestling. Dan, just in your mind, why should wrestling be an Olympic sport forever, and how can other people help in our effort to keep wrestling in the Olympics?
Well, we've already been through wrestling and a lot of its potential issues for forever. By that I mean in my lifetime. I've seen things get enacted at certain levels and then they affect other things. And because of that, we've had some great organizations be sensitive about these issues. And a lot of these have really worked extremely hard, like the NWCA, the Coaches Association. The NCAA also, is very sensitive to a lot of issues, and they try to figure out how to make a lot of things work. Well, that's kind of where we are right now, just because of the fact that it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. You got to take care of your people. And Congress, whether it's in the state of Iowa, whether it's in the United States of America, he talked about crossing party lines, and he talked about staying on the same side of the aisle and doing the right thing. And we have to do the right thing. The right thing is to offer people what they deserve. And so there's no reason why the people in the state of Florida, for example, when they grow up and there's 8,000 kids wrestle, should have to leave Florida if they don't need to. But they need to now because there's no place to compete. And we are in that situation in maybe a few states, but we've actually attacked these issues. We have added 100 programs in the last 7 years, college programs. And some people don't know that. This is the education process. And so the education process right now is for these countries and these groups to make sure that these people that are in the position of power, to make sure that they understand that we are very well situated and that we're very much willing to change at the level of authority to make us more presentable, to make us more fitting in with what they would like, as long as it's reasonable. 180 countries, it's like we're in every state but one for high school. And so those states should be offering places. So we've been there before, not to this level from the top level. The very top level is the Olympic Games for wrestling. Unlike many of the other sports that are in there, it's more like, hey, let's go there and have some fun. We go there and we're serious, and that's what really makes us or breaks us when we're really in wrestling. So it's the right thing to do, and I'm hoping that we have people that will actually do the right thing. And I know that, and the reason why I said hoping is because I've been waiting for his Congress to do the right thing. You know, and so, and I know there's issues. And a lot of times, you know, you walk away and they still didn't do the right thing. So sooner the better. And for our sport, you know, it's very, very important that, that we do that. So my only question is right now is really where are we? We're gathering information. And mostly I'm getting it from Bill Scheer and USA Wrestling and Stan Desick. And as we gather that information, then I think we'll be able to make more concrete decisions and solutions. Right now, we're still gathering, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Coach. Our fourth guest to the far left is Jordan Burroughs, two-time NCAA champ for Nebraska, 2011 world champ, 2012 Olympic champ, and he's training currently to win more world and Olympic gold medals for the United States. Jordan, since the IOC recommendation, you've competed in Iran and Belarus, and you've been out there in the world with your peers in wrestling. What's your feeling about the worldwide reaction to the recommendation from the IOC, and how do you see athletes and nations coming together behind the effort to preserve Olympic wrestling?
It's been good. You know, it's been a great effort by a number of countries. You know, the superpowers in the world, Iran, Russia, the United States. Going out to Iran was awesome. You know, there were thousands of fans in the stands, had Save Olympic Wrestling signs written in Farsi and in English. You know, so it's definitely been a commemorative effort, and we formed a camaraderie, you know, and even though we're opponents on the mat, we've just definitely established a brotherhood, and we're linking up to try to reverse this decision that the IOC has made. You know, for me, it's always been about wrestling as long as I can and as long as I love the sport. You know, and after 2016, I want to sit down and evaluate my career and decide whether I want to continue to wrestle to 2020 or not, you know, and for me, I always wanted that to be my own decision and not the IOC's. So we're just doing all we can right now to continue to press that effort. Obviously, linking up, like I said, with some of the other countries around the world, and just showing that wrestling is a sport that transcends all politics. So regardless of what goes on between the governments, we're just linking up and doing the right thing.
Thank you, Jordan. Now at this point, we'll open up the questions. I'm sorry we don't have a stick mic, but I'd like you to raise your hand, and when I call on you, please tell me who you are so that we can, and who you'd like to ask the question of. And I'll start first right here with Mike Finn.
Okay, this is a question for Bill. Mike Finn from WIN. There's been a lot of these ground support groups like this created all over the world type of thing. But the biggest question is the IOC Executive Committee listening to this? Where does that stand right now?
Yeah, I believe they are listening. I think there's two things that have occurred because of the groundswell of support. First, the IOC Executive Board has felt the need to defend their decision publicly. If you're getting people defending their decision, you definitely know you've made an impact with the publicity that they felt. Second, they've been open to meeting with our leadership. My brother met with several members of the IOC Executive Board, and our leadership of FILA has met with those members, as well as a meeting with the president of the International Olympic Committee, Jacques Roque. So I believe we're being heard. The issue now is we need to not only be heard, but we need to impact. We need to change minds. And I think the campaign, you know, of all of these groups, as Jordan said, these groups around the world that are getting together and uniting through FILA, our international voice, we can impact the IOC in their decision. And I think the unification of the sport is a nice benefit of this sort of tragic circumstance, but it's one I think that can really help not only the IOC campaign and influencing them, but can help wrestling globally. The more united we are, the stronger we are.
Second question is back here.
Alex Kursky, KCCI here in town. Coach Gable, we were just in this building a month ago with Governor Branstad and talking about this issue. What has come about meeting with Governor Branstad and Congressman, this might be for you too, and has anything really been done for here in the state of Iowa with that meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's actually had an initiative that the last number I heard was like 33 other governors and other states have joined. And so that right there is a coalition of people that have, you know, to save Olympic wrestling. So, you know, and I know that the governor had to throw this thing together real quickly, and he had a question about where the money come from, and because he bought some T-shirts, and he defended it by saying that the money's well worth spent because of the economy that wrestling brings to the state of Iowa and probably across. And he wasn't even talking about any other state, but just talking about in the state of Iowa, and obviously sold out arenas for the state tournament, sold out arenas for national championships, NAIA locally as well, national championships in Cedar Rapids, and maybe one other one, I think, junior community college. So, you know, obviously, you know, he's defending what he's doing by spending money without going to the, you know, the long stay of trying to get some funds, and it was maybe, you know, $500 or something. So it was well worth the effort. So that, you know, that was very impressive to me, because, you know, I really do feel, you know, across the world in a lot of countries that, you know, wrestling it's a business, and I know that we have to do more and do better things at the field level to show that the IOC that we are a business, and a good business, besides just a sport. And we do have that opportunity. We just need to be able to work it.
Think about Iowa politics. You got Steve King on the right. You got Bruce Braley on the left. They both support the resolution. They're both strongly involved in this effort. I think every member of the Iowa congressional delegation is on the resolution. In our state, Ohio, I'm considered the most conservative Senate. He's sponsoring the resolution in the Senate. And the last example I'd give you just happened this past Wednesday of this week. Last week, former Speaker Hastert called me up and said, "Hey, Jordan, the Mongolian delegation, their equivalent of the Speaker of their house, is going to be in town. They're meeting with Boehner. You need to get in that meeting and talk to them about wrestling." I said, "Fine." So I talked to Speaker Boehner. He said, "Sure, come on over." There was a little talk about trade relations, everything else, but the bulk of the meeting was spent talking about the sport of wrestling and how important it is. So this is, as Coach has said, as I think everyone up here has said, this is an issue that brings people together. People around the world know how special this sport is. I mean, if I could real quick, Gary, just think about this. Think about the people who impacted your life. This is why I think it's so important. And Coach Gable talks about this probably better than anyone else. Wrestling, what it does for young people, is good for a country, it's good for a culture, it's good for society. You think about the people who impacted your life in a positive fashion. If you're like most people, next to your parents, it was probably a coach or a teacher you had along the way. And for me, it was my high school wrestling coach, who passed away a few years ago. But an amazing guy. He taught chemistry and physics in our class. He was the toughest teacher in our school, and he was the toughest wrestling coach in the state of Ohio. And this is no exaggeration. Every single day, Coach McCunn talked about discipline. He said, "Jordan, you want to do well in my class? This is chemistry. You're going to have to be disciplined about preparing the night before, reading the material, coming to class, participate. It's going to take discipline to do well in this class." And in the wrestling room, oh my goodness, he talked about it every stinking day. It drove me crazy because he sounded like my dad, and I got it all from, you know, you get it at home all the time. But I can still hear him. Self-discipline's the most important character quality necessary to accomplish anything of meaning, anything of significance. I would, that guy shut up. He's driving me crazy. But it's true, and that's what wrestling teaches people. And in our wrestling room, my brother's a coach at our high school. We've won the state tournament the last 13 years in a row. The Ron McCunn wrestling room, Coach McCunn's statement hangs there where everyone sees it every single day. Discipline is doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. And that meant doing things the right way when you'd rather do them the easy way. And it's a lesson that we need more of in our culture. It would be good for our country. It's good for the world when people are involved in this sport. And that's why we're also passionate about it. And that's why you guys care about it so much and write about it. But that's what's at stake here. And people, I think, get that. And that's why you're seeing this movement that you're seeing all over the world.
And wrestling needs the support. We've got the the local level support in the state of Iowa, the national level support in Congress and the Senate and the resolution. And then we're going to work on, and we've already started working on, a global parliamentary action so we can get people on a joint basis in the US and Russia, Iran, and around the world to issue this global statement, which says to the IOC two things. Wrestling is important to these countries, but also it's relatively important versus the other sports that are on their same agenda. And that's a good message for them to have.
You have right up here, the first two guys in the first row. And then we'll come back over here.
Hi, I'm Wright Thompson from ESPN Magazine. For one of you guys, do you have a rough, I don't know a better way to put this, but I mean, do you have a rough idea of a preliminary whip count for that meeting in September about how many people are going to vote for you and against you and how many minds you have to change?
That's a difficult thing to do because the vote is private, so you're never going to know what the count is, and they're very veteran participants in the political process. There's two other votes that are taking place at the same time that are probably more important to them than our vote. And one vote is the selection of the 2020 host city. And the other vote is for the new president of the IOC who's going to follow Jacques Rogue in the presidency. So all of these votes, and we don't have to tell anyone more than Congressman Jordan, when there's multiple votes occurring, there's a lot of horse trading that's going on back and forth. We'll have to be aware of all of those sorts of things. The difficulty in the process of getting the ratification of the executive board overturned or rejected is that probably the members of the executive board are going to be lobbying the general membership for you to approve their recommendation. Plus, there's 6 or 7 other bubble sports that are going to be lobbying against you to make sure that they don't in turn get put on the bubble if their recommendation is rejected. And then finally, it's been a platform campaign of the IOC president to eliminate sports. And so it makes it a lot easier for him if that resolution passes. So perhaps our better avenue to stay in the games is to win the competition against the provisional sports, to be named one of the provisional sports. And we're competing, just so everyone knows here, we're competing against karate, wushu, sport rock climbing, wakeboarding, baseball and softball. What am I missing? Squash.
Roller sports.
And roller sports, which is inline skating, racing. So we have to compete against those sports. And the problem there is they've been campaigning with the IOC for 3, 4, 5 years in some instances, spending a lot of money and time and effort to already influence those votes. The interim step is in May. We have got to, there's going to be a vote by the executive board to take the 8 sports that are now named as provisional sport candidates down to 2, 3, or 4. And we need to really canvass those 15 IOC executive board members to make sure we get on that short list. So that's what we're working on. Our committee in FILA has already mapped out a schedule and target list of each one of the executive board members, and we'll be meeting with them individually to try to garner that support. As well, we need to demonstrate and show them that wrestling leadership is changing and that the organization of the sport at the top level is willing to change and amend and improve. I will make this clear though, wrestling itself is healthy, growing, and dynamic and a global, truly global sport. And it's not the issue or problem with our sport. Our sport's beautiful, tremendous, and one of the best Olympic sports out there. The issue is with the governance of the sport at the highest level, the organization, and the way we've conducted ourselves in the IOC process.
Thank you.
Miller from the Des Moines Register. With your experience with Olympic bid processes and the IOC, it's clear what this group has done in a fast way and in a big way is organize things in a public relations, awareness, public pressure sense, but what other realistic, meaningful points of influence can you have before that vote? Beyond awareness, beyond pressure, what other meaningful things can you do that might influence a vote?
Well, the one thing we've done on our committee is created a direct list, a direct line of influence to the International Wrestling Federation. And through that direct line of influence, which includes a member of our committee being the vice president and assistant to the acting president of FILA, that's Stan Desik, my brother Jim has been engaged by FILA, and they haven't worked out the details of their contract yet, but to come in and operate in an operating role with that organization. And our goal through that influence is to impress upon FILA the necessity for real change between now and May, and also for them to begin to understand and engage in the lobbying process with the IOC membership on the executive board and then more broadly. And I think we made a good start at both of those things.
Next question.
Dan, this is Scott Brown from the Pittsburgh Tribune Review. You talked earlier about the number of colleges that have started wrestling programs. I was just wondering if you could talk about the overall health of the sport and sort of the comeback it's made since it took some hits from Title IX.
Well, it's just not Title IX. It's, there's several issues. Our sport's a tough sport, and maybe it's a little bit tougher than what people visualize in this day and age, and that's one of the main issues. The main issue is that we don't want to go so far down that all sports aren't tough. I mean, they're disciplined in a way that you got to learn skill and technique, but just for wrestling, you go through a wrestling practice and it's like, well, you can't go through a wrestling practice. I mean, none of you people can go through a wrestling practice. It's just the bottom line. It's, well, not right now anyway. Maybe a month with me, I could get you ready. But, so those are, that's some of the things that, that's difficult. But because of that, we need that. We need that level of excellence and standard that's out there. And as long as we make it safe, it's like the football concussion. They got an issue, and so they're going to work on it. There's great people in football, and they're going to work on it. They're going to hopefully solve it. At least they're working on it. And so we have a lot of issues, and we're worked on it, and we've solved a lot of them, and we're moving forward, and we're making progress. It's not that easy because of higher dollars on facilities and more emphasis on salaries for the main ones. And our goal is to get us to become one of the main ones. And this issue, if we can, and I hate this if stuff, I'm not one of those type of guys, but it is to take our sport to a higher level than ever and bring us from the bottom of the core sports or provisional sport, whatever he says, for not even in the core, to get on that core and to move it up and to visualize that we're in the top 10. And excuse me, I don't like top 10, but I'm about number 1, so that's where I see us. I mean, that's the only way I look at it. But you got to start somewhere, and so. But we have some really good organizations, and we've come together from the USA Wrestling and from some of their competitors within the United States have actually signed on and become a coalition. And we have the NWCA, which used to be somewhat of a competitor with some of these other sports for resources, and the Hall of Fames, which is another competitor for resources, but they're all working together, and which makes us stronger. But there's still issues. I mean, don't think that there's not. It's just some of them we really don't know because of the hiding factor, secrecy. And so if we really knew what was right before us, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, we could attack it, but we just think we know, and that's what's hard.
Maggie?
I have 2 questions for you, Bill. How important is growing women's wrestling as a part of this effort?
It's incredibly important. One of the things that the International Olympic Committee wants to see is sport for all, and an ability for sport to include and have representation for women is tremendously important, not only for wrestling, but for all sports. And we can improve there. We've clearly been, and FILA's been a leader in incorporating women, and they've driven hard to convince the IOC to open the Olympics for women, which they've done. But their leadership at the FILA Bureau needs significantly more. There's only 1 woman member on the FILA Bureau. They need more representation. We're going to ask them to form a commission on women's wrestling at the FILA Bureau level to continue to build upon the momentum that they've already have and increase the participation for women in wrestling at the international level. And in this country, it's been particularly supported strongly by USA Wrestling. We need to continue to work to grow it. As many of you may or may not know, I coached the women's wrestling team at the World Championships in 2005 and 2006 and was very engaged in that program. I'm a tremendous supporter of women's wrestling in this country, and I'd love to see it. There are many colleges already have adopted women's wrestling here, and I'd love to see it become a full-fledged NCAA-supported sport.
Okay. Second question. And what do you think the selection of the 2020 city, what impact will that have on that September vote for wrestling?
Well, this really, we'd ask the same question if there were two bills in front of Congress, one, that was supporting some initiative, another healthcare bill, and you were trying to garner support, right? You'd go back and forth and do horse trading for votes. The IOC is simply a political body, just like Congress or the Senate, and they're going to go horse trading back and forth for support and for votes. And so one vote will certainly influence the other, and so we have to be particularly mindful of where the support lies for the bid cities and how that interacts with our support for wrestling, and make sure we're on top of the horse trading that will occur in that voting process.
Martin, I think this will be our last question, guys. I know everyone has semifinal needs, and we also want to have one-on-one time for some of the guys that want to stay a little longer. But Martin?
Yeah, this question's for Bill. You said that there was a provisional sport that wrestling could be a part of, or they could be part of the core sports. So I guess my question to you is do you guys have to choose which one we want to go? Or is it a choice,
No,
hey, we're going to go after being a core sport?
We're going after both. It's a good question. We're going to try to get on the calendar as a provisional sport. The IOC has said they're going to let us make a presentation at the Sport Accord meeting in May in St. Petersburg, Russia, where the IOC Executive Board will vote on the short list. They'll narrow the 8 down to 2 or 3. So we'll have our shot at bat. We'll try to get at that 2 or 3, but we're also going to try to vote down the recommendation of the Executive Board to eliminate the wrestling from as a core sport in September in Buenos Aires. And just as I end this, and we'll talk about, you guys can talk individually with other folks, but I want to let people know, there's a tremendous importance of Olympic wrestling to the health, I believe, of wrestling in this country. And we will grow this sport. It will be dynamic in this country with or without the Olympics, but it can be better. I remember being an 11-year-old. I just started wrestling and gone to one tournament, and I watched the 1972 Olympics on TV and saw this man 2 seats to the left of me win a gold medal. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to be in those Olympics someday. And that drove me. I ended up going to a couple wrestling camps in Iowa with Dan, but that drove me from that moment on, and I wrestled until I was 28 years old to get that Olympic bronze medal. There's millions of kids across the world that see that same Olympic Games that are inspired the same way, and we need to keep wrestling in the Olympics.
Okay, now if you'd like to come up and speak individually with these guys, again, one will be able to let you get back to covering the event. We really appreciate you being here.